Getting into one, but it feels good 3 to 4 all the way through.
Yep, but see, now you know that it's tight and the car's where it's supposed to be.
I'm going in.
So now you can start working on that being tight. And what I'm going to do is go over with you things how to test and what to take from the changes you make, and then you guys will be ready to go.
I've been trying to set them up like a dirt late model, and it don't work.
David, you said if I was skating the front end or pushing, that I need to change my lifting point?
Yeah, lift a little bit sooner. I mean, it takes practice, but you'll know when you're lifting too soon and you need to adjust it in the chassis, or if you're just overdriving the car and driving too deep into the corner. So that just takes feel. You'll have to kind of work with it, and you'll find that. That'll come.
I got to tell you, I don't know why somebody didn't think of this sooner, having this school stuff. This is pretty sweet, man.
Yeah, they all gripe that there's nobody racing, but they don't want to help.
Usually I think front preload would always help you enter the turns.
They don't want you to be as fast as them.
I wonder what the rear one does.
We'll get into that too.
Thank God someone's actually going to tell me what it does for once.
Yeah, right. Me too. I have no idea.
I mean, I'm always up there with the other guys, with Ladowski and everybody. But out of everything that I've adjusted, there's rear camber, the truck preload. Those are the kind of stuff that I've been looking for.
Okay, guys, anytime y'all ready, y'all can start clearing the tracks here in the next minute or so, and we'll get. But that's what I'm going to go over with you. Is I'm not going to go into spring adjustments and shocks and all that. That's an all-day thing, or for another class. What I'm going to do is go over the front end and that rear end geometry, which is a little bit more foreign to people, and see if I can give you an idea of what that does. And then I'll tell you exactly what you need to start testing to get the car to where you need it to be. But we'll go over that front and rear end geometry here right quick as soon as we get quieted down here.
You said in reality you don't worry about the temp of the tires, you just worry about the even wear, right?
Right now. And that probably is going to come into play later when they get this tire model and the new surface model, because they're going to have to fix the surface too. Because you've got to realize with the new tire model, the tire model is great. Trust me, guys, this tire model is great. But the surface that we're actually putting the tire on is the same thing we were putting it on in 2003. They just, that hadn't been changed. So now that's got to be changed. So it's going to take those guys some time, but they're doing a hell of a job with this. They really are.
You're doing a hell of a job teaching us right now, man.
Well, I appreciate it. All right, let's see. Now, y'all can hear me okay now? I'm back in the garage here, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, what we're going to do now, what I'm going to do is, because we're about an hour into this thing, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you about the front end and the rear end geometry. All right, what that is that front ARB, which is that whole section of that front ARB, and the truck arm preload at the bottom. Okay? Now, the truck arm preload at the bottom, and we'll go over it because it's a little quicker. What that is what that's doing is basically telling the rear end how quick to react. All right? At a negative number, when you start getting on the throttle, that rear end's going to react a little quicker. Okay? Now, you can tighten the car up or loosen the car up with just that adjustment. And it's a minor adjustment, it's a very fine tune. If you've got a car that's just a little too tight or a little too loose, you can do this with that. Now, just like the front end preload, I rarely, but occasionally will, but rarely will I run that truck arm preload on a negative number. The reason being, the preload up there at the front is just like the preload at the rear. They affect how free the car rolls the corners. From the time the car starts turning into the corner to the time the car is on the straightaway flat, there needs to be a freedom to it, to where the car is just rolling, where you could, if you could push it with your finger, it'd just roll off by itself. Okay, there's no resistance to it. If you go to a negative number, there's a little bit of resistance that's keeping the car from being free in the corner. So I'll 9 times out of 10, I'll put that at a positive number. Now, if you'll take my setup, the one that everybody's working with here, now with a negative number, if you click it to the right once, it'll be a 7.4. What that's going to do is free the rear end up through the center of the corner. Okay, that's also going to make you just a tick looser off, which is not nothing you want to adjust anything else to right now. But you'll learn this as you go. That's going to loosen you up off, but it's not necessarily making you looser. It's freeing you up. So it's going to give you that looser feel, which this you can adjust actually with the right foot. If you slow that progression down a little bit, you can free the car up and it be a little looser, slow that progression down to the floor. Well, you've got that bite off without having the resistance to stop you from slower speeds. Same way with the front end. Now, that front end up there at the top, now we've got that rear end back there at a positive number. This front end has got that 2.5-inch diameter on your front sway bar. That's how thick your front sway bar is. Okay? The adjustment of that front sway bar will depend on how the car is reacting through the corner. If you've tried this, if sometimes you've gone into use somebody else's setup or something that they've said, hey, this is a good setup, and you go in, when you go in and lift off that corner and go in and the car goes in and it feels like the front end moves left and right, feels like it's a little unstable, that's that front sway bar up there is not big enough. You're using too little a front sway bar to get the car to turn, but it's unsteadling the car in the corners. You've got to have it big enough to where that car, when it goes in and that front end sits and doesn't wiggle. It's got to be good and steady. That way you can start adjusting other things to get it looser or tighter depending on what you need. But if it's wiggling, the whole time that thing goes in there and it's unstable, you're having to weight off that right foot. And when you're weighting off that right foot, somebody's fixing to tap you in the ass. So that one, when I'm adjusting it, I would usually go in and bring it down to like a 2, something like that. I'm not going to do it now because it's got a pretty good feel to it. We can do that. I mean, y'all can do that later. But what I'll do to that is bring it down to a 2, see if the front end wiggles on me. I'll take it down until that front end feels a little unstable, and then I'm back up a couple of notches just to make sure I get it good and stable. And that's where I know that my front sway bar is where it should be. Now, the arm symmetry is the same way. When you're going in, you guys felt that little bit of bottoming out. All right, that arm symmetry, what we're going to make the adjustment here for is take that arm symmetry and put it to a 4 and watch your link slack. Hit apply. See your link slack there at 6/16 now. Okay? What that has done is it has made the front end a little more solid to where there's less travel, to where it's going to go down into that front at the bump where it's going to bottom out. But basically it's the exact same thing now that it was at a 3 and a 0/16. It's exactly the same because you've allowed the travel with the link slack. So now what you've done is freed the car up some more. That has made a stable front end that is rolling a little freer because you've got that positive number in that link slack. So now you can start adjusting the link slack. What this has done, I know you've heard this on NASCAR. They've talked that they've left room for adjustability. Well, that's what this is doing. When you've got those track bars up a little bit and there's room to go up and down on both sides, and that link slack right there, there's room to go up and down with the link slack now without adjusting that preload. That's leaving room for adjustability. So now what you've got to do is go out with this right here, with just changing that link, just changing the rear end geometry, and change that 4 to a 6/16. Okay? Now, that's the only change we've made. Go out and run that a few laps and see how that feels.
What if you wasn't bottoming out? I never bottomed out one time.
Well, that's fine. That's fine. That means, well, that's a good thing, because if you hadn't bottomed out, you're probably lifting and getting into the throttle at the right points. And sometimes you can adjust where you're bottoming out, or if you're bottoming out, by the way you drive the car.
Now, David, is that adjustment made with the attach checked on?
Absolutely. See, right now, I very rarely even unattach it now, because the preload's not messing with it. The ride heights are not changing. So I'm not unattaching it. I'm leaving it attached for right now, so we don't even have to worry about that right now. Whoops, sorry about that. Got a little loose there.
Now, what point do we turn this over to the analyzer?
Say now, once you've got this like this, and you've started doing this, you can start making 10 to 12 lap runs. Put it in the analyzer, and you're off to the races.
You mean the NPR analyzer, right?
Absolutely. And you don't add that, and that's just a suggestion. You can use it or not use it. It's up to you. But that's a good, right now that you've got the ride heights where they need to be, you've got the preload where it needs to be, you've got the weight back a little bit there where you're going to get a little speed out of it. Now you can start putting it in that analyzer and telling it what it's doing, and you know that you're actually getting the right feedback from the car.
It's like a neutral. Oh, sorry.
Yep. Now just pay attention to what the car's doing now, and then when we get in here, I'll ask a couple of you, what the car feels like, and we'll see what those two changes done and what you think the car's doing now.
With this change here, Dave, my rear end's bottoming out.
It will, because it's freed the travel up some, which can be fixed. I mean, it's not, you're going to go through that. Sometimes it'll get worse before it gets better, because you're having to get some things freed up.
I'm already half a second faster than my setup with the basic that I ran.
Yeah, I went from 22nd quickest on that last run to 10th quickest by myself, just with that little change.
Now, David, I don't feel a difference with this arm symmetry difference, but
Damn, I went from 30th to 2nd.
Say, that's not necessarily a bad thing if you're not feeling the difference, because what you've done is freed the car up, and it's rolling easier. And if it still feels the same, now you just got to go make some adjustments to something else. So that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Have you ever used the Matrix D3 or no?
Do I ever use what?
Matrix D3? Have you ever heard of it?
No. And the only reason I don't is because I've been doing this for so long. Everything, I just sort of know all of it from just years of doing it. So all that stuff I already know anyway.
with the basic setup as far as the springs, like the springs are basically pretty well all you need. Like there should be no reason to really start making radical spring changes.
9 times out of 10, no. The basic setups are actually really close. There are just some minor things, some things I've learned actually from real life setups that will help, but basically the basic setups are pretty close. Now I'll usually start messing with springs and stuff just to get a better feel out of it, but other than that, no.
Feels good to me. I like this. Never pass a spring perch offset and all that would make a huge difference in feel actually. Just change ride height.
Alright, just play with it for 3 or 4 more minutes here, and then we'll get off and kind of discuss what it felt like to you guys. I'll be right back. And you'll want to remember now, when you're doing these testing and you're doing these laps, you don't want to sit and turn hot laps right now. You'll do that later. Find out how fast the car can go on the first couple of laps. That'll come later. Right now, you're wanting to get good race type runs for 10 or 12 laps, so you can get an accurate assessment of what the chassis is doing for you. And then look at your tire wear, and that way you'll be able to get true readings and make the right adjustments to the car.
Hey, David, is there a special number on the front to back weight, the ballast? Is there a specific number you try to shoot for?
No, absolutely not. That's one thing you've got to get out of your head, is that there are any correct numbers, if there's any certain thing. A lot of people use those shocks that you always have to run 0.32s or 32 zeros or.
I'm going in the fifth.
And personally, to me, I think that's a waste. If they're going to put these shocks in there, and the best shocks at every track you go to are all 0.32s, why put them in there? So that just seems to be a waste to me. But the shocks are usually the fine tuning that I'm doing once I've got my springs set.
Sorry, Dorian. I was trying to get away with the guys coming up, so that's all right.
All right, right about a couple more minutes, and then we'll clear the track and start over here. Sorry, dude.
While you're giving this a couple of minutes, I'm looking here in the garage, and there's a couple of adjustments. It's got the rod height a little higher on the left than the right. That doesn't really make a difference. They're still real close.
Right, and shortly I'm going to fix that, and I'm going to show you how to fix that. And it's really quite simple, to be honest with you, and it will make a major thing, but I'll show you how to fix that in a minute, to where it gets it to where I like it, where everything's good and even, but we'll get into that in just a minute.
Seems like after a while, turn 1 and 2 seemed a little more smoother. Sorry, overall. I was trying to get low so we could go by.
Is there a bump in turn as you come in turn 1?
Absolutely.
Junior's bump. I think they called that a couple years ago.
Yeah, you can kind of miss it if you hit it down low, but anything off the low to mid side and high, you hit it, and it doesn't really affect the car. You just feel it. I mean, it's pretty good.
Go ahead, Earl. It's 2:08 right now. At 2:10, I'll call everybody in. So you got a couple of minutes.
Hey, off the wall topic here, I just realized who David sounds like. He sounds like Dale Jarrett. That's cool.
Get that right.
But there's a reason for that. I was raised right across the street from Dale Jarrett.
I couldn't put my head on it. It's like, man, I know this voice from somewhere, and it just hit me. That's cool.
Yeah, Dale's dad and my dad were buddies. They were biscuit buddies, what we called them, because whenever Ned was in town, him and my dad would go to McDonald's in Ned's van and sit in his van in the parking lot and eat McDonald's biscuits and watch people.
Man, that's a cool story. You don't get to meet a lot of sim racers on here that have cool stories like that.
I'm going to be ducking off here.
So if you run a B-class open set, realistically, David, how long do the green flag runs?
I'm sorry, I didn't get what you were asking there.
Like I've been running the truck 6, and at Bristol you're lucky to get 5 laps of green flag. But in the B-class open, how long are those guys actually running?
Well, see, that just varies. It just all depends on what split you get, when you get it. I mean, there's no way of telling that. So my theory is I always set the car up for a long run, because everybody wants nobody wants to wreck. Nobody wants to screw up their SR. Nobody wants to get sent out of the race. Everybody wants to run green flag racing, but sometimes it just doesn't happen. But if everybody actually gets what they want, then you're set up for a long run. Sometimes there's no way of, sometimes short run's what you need, and there's nothing you can do about that. But I'll always set up for a long run because that is the goal that everybody's after.
I'll tell you what the problem is half the time is these people, they see these races coming up and they find a setup and they try it out, but they don't test it or nothing. So they go into a race, and of course there's all these cautions because the guys can't drive the setups they just found.
That's a huge problem.
Yeah, well, that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this. Maybe now that they can, a lot of people have a basic idea, and don't keep this to yourselves. Once you get out into the masses there with your buddies, tell them what you've learned here and pass it on. All right, guys, anytime y'all get ready, y'all can come on in. We'll clear the track and go back into this.
How concerned should we be with the right side tire temperatures if the right front is if it's 20 degrees hotter than the right rear, is that like a limit, or is there a limit, or should it be more even?
No, the temperatures are not that big a concern, at least not right now. What you want to concern yourself with is tire wear. If you get done with a 25-lap run and you're 2 to 3% more on the right front than the right rear gone, then you've got a problem. You're going to have to either do one of two things or both, and that's adjust the wedge by taking some weight off of that right front, or adjust your driving style to where you're not putting as much pressure on that right front when you go into the corners.
You're going to teach us how to take the wedge out because I'm 20 degrees and 12 laps.
Absolutely. That's no problem. We can do that real quick.
I'm 30 degrees on the right front from the outer and the inner.
Yeah, when I went out and run, I noticed it was a little bit tighter, which is fine. I mean, it's nothing we can't be adjusted out, and I'm pretty sure I know why it's that way, but we'll fix that in just a second.
Because I'm 3 degrees across, like 88, 89, and 91 on the right front.
See, that's not a bad thing there at all. As long as you're more on the inside of the tire on the right front than the outside, and your camber may can be adjusted, but that's going to we'll have to probably get into that in another class. But all right, we got everybody off. Let me get in the garage here. Hang on a second. Okay, everybody's made their adjustments. Now, before I get into this, hang on. Before I get into this, try not to overstep on anybody, but give me kind of an overview. What did the car feel like to you?
Awesome. A little tight, maybe. I mean, not really that bad, but more than what I've been used to before going into the turns. But everything else is perfect.
I think the same way. I found it was getting tighter quicker than I'm used to.
I just kept getting a tick tight coming off. I was good in through the center, but just a tick tight coming off.
Okay. All right. So everybody's pretty much about this within a realm about the same way. So everybody's making the adjustments. The cars. See, now what's happening now is that when you've made these adjustments to the car that was already neutral, when you made the same adjustment, it gives the same reaction. So that means you're getting the proper or the correct information from the car. So everybody's getting the same information. So that means the car is giving you the correct information. Now everybody can make the adjustment they need to go in the way it needs to be. So see, that's what we're after. All right, hang on. Let me get in the garage here.
Dave, I was bottom out on the rear end. The rear end was bottom out. I don't know if that was from me getting on it too soon.
No, that's a possibility, but that will fix too. That's easily enough done. All right, now you'll notice that now that we've been out running, we've made the adjustment to the arm symmetry. You notice that your ride heights now are a 551 on the right and a 798 on the right, 799 on the left, 552 on the left. Okay, so you're a little higher on the left than you are on the right, and the car's a little bit tight. All right? Now, I told you a while ago I like to keep my ride heights even. Now, go over here down to the bottom where you go to the tire page of this. All right. Now, if you're right now you're looking at your tire information. All right. Remember your ride heights over there in the chassis page are one click higher on the left sides than they are on the right sides, right? All right. Look at your left tire pressures here. Take both left side tire pressures down 1 pound, which is a left click twice, because you can go down a half a pound. So your left front tire should now be a 35. Your left rear tire should now be a 37. Look at your ride heights. So your left front ride height's now a 551. You're 798 across the rear, and you're a 552 on the right. Okay? Go back to your tire page. Your right front tire, take it down a half a pound. 64.5 now. Go look at the chassis. Still 552 on the right. Go back, take that right front tire down half a pound. Now your right front should be a 64. Now look at your ride heights. All even. And also what you've just done is you've softened up that right front tire, which will loosen you up on entry. And what you've done is give yourself more split on your tire pressures. Okay? And you've softened up the left side tires, which is also going to make the left side grab through the center of the corner and loosen you up coming through the whole corner without making a major adjustment. So now your ride heights are even. And you've also addressed that problem that the car had with being a tick tight going in and through the center. You've opened up the split on your tire pressures, which is going to loosen you up just a little bit, and you've made your ride heights even. And you're also almost as far down on the front as you can be, and you're almost as high as you can be on the rear, which is just absolutely perfect. So now what you need to do now is go over here and save that. And
Am I the only one that lost him?
no, I hear you.
Yeah, I don't hear him. I don't hear him either. I don't know if they still unplugged it or something.
All right, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that's just me being in the garage there, not hitting the button right. All right, y'all are with me with the tire pressures and the ride heights are all even, correct?
That's correct.
Sir, good job. Kip.
Okay. Now, I'm gonna give you a little trick here that was actually given to me from Joe Nemechek's setup at New Hampshire. I'm very lucky as to one of the friends in the Carolina club that I have during the racing season will send me real-life setups. He works on a real-life racing team. He's a tire changer for one of the nationwide cars. He sends me their setup information translated into numbers the way we have it here. So I can put actually the driver's setup in this car to see what it would be and try to transform it into what works here. Some of it works, some of it doesn't. One thing that I have found that does work here, and that is the caster. I never even thought about this until I see John Nemechek's car at New Hampshire with his caster settings. And his caster settings were set at a 3.8 on the right and 6.8 on the left. He had hit what we call in the South as hillbillying it. It's hillbillied the caster settings, which is higher on the left and lower on the right. And what that does is make that left front tire grab and keeps it planted through the center of the corner. So what we're going to do with this one, and make sure y'all can still hear me. I'm in the garage. Y'all hear me, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, what I'm going to tell you to do now, you've made your tire changes. What I want you to do is take that right front caster down all the way to the bottom. That's a 3.8. Take that right front caster, bring it up to a 6.8. Okay? Apply. Now that right there is a setting that's going to be pretty universal about everywhere you go. Now, A lot of people run that left front caster all the way up, which is fine. I like the 6.8 because it frees the car up a little bit more for me, but there are times I will run that 7.8, especially on the flat tracks. Milwaukee, I'm running 7.8 on the left, 3.8 on the right, because it keeps that left front digging right there in that center of that corner. So, but faster tracks like this, you're wanting a little bit more of a free roll. So now the only changes you've made is the tire pressure and that caster. Now go out there and run about 10 or 12 laps and see how it feels.
Now you said the left front 6.8, right front 3.8.
Exactly right.
So do you always run 3.8 at all the other tracks, or what?
Yeah, I'm close to that. Somewhere between a 3.8 and a 4.1 about every track I go to.
All right.
Now remember what the car felt like before you made these changes. Now go out there and run it the same way you were running the last run and see what the car feels like.
Still bottoming out my left foot.
That's all right. We can fix that. I mean, but you got to go through that when you're getting the chassis right.
Sort of broadly, but once again, you said the right front caster was the 6.8, and then the left was the 3?
No, right front caster 3.8, left front caster 6.8.
Thank you. Got it backwards.
I did too.
V3.
U4.
Now, would this help on the A car possibly?
Absolutely.
What do you think is a big difference between working on a Class B set like we are now and working on a Class C or Class A car?
I'm not real sure, but the difference between the C, the truck, and the B car, I hadn't done enough testing between the two to really be able to give you an educated guess on that. The difference, the biggest difference between the B car and the A car is front springs. Front springs on the A car are usually big because they've got the bump stops and they're not coil bound. These cars are coil bound. They like those front springs being already compressed and small. So that's the biggest difference.
She's loose now.
Well, you were complaining tight. Now we got to get it loose.
I love it. That suits my driving style.
I'm still getting a huge push in the apex in 1 and 2.
I run CST pedals, Wendell.
Where's your brake setting at on those things? So that's what I got.
Brake setting? Oh, hell, I don't even know. When I calibrate it, my brakes, I will always leave a little bit of room because I right foot, left foot. I'm not a right foot driver. I use both feet.
Right, but on the CST